The nasturtiums and other plants which his father had delighted to train before his window had all disappeared from the upper part of the house. Leaning against a tree, he gazed thoughtfully for a time at the upper stories of the shabby little house. Then he advanced to the door and asked whether there were any rooms to be let. Though answered in the negative, he begged so earnestly to be permitted to visit those on the fifth floor that, in despite of the oft-repeated assurance of the concierge that they were occupied, Dante succeeded in inducing the man to go up to the tenants and ask for permission for a gentleman to be allowed to look at them. The tenants of the humble lodging were a young couple who had been scarcely married a week. And seeing them, Dante sighed heavily. Nothing in the two small chambers forming the apartments remained as it had been in the time of the elder Dante. The very paper was different, while the articles of antiquated furniture with which the rooms had been filled in Edmond's time had all disappeared. The four walls alone remained as he had left them. The bed belonging to the present occupants was placed as the former owner of the chamber had been accustomed to have his, and, in spite of his efforts to prevent it, the eyes of Edmond were suffused in tears as he reflected that on that spot the old man had breathed his last, vainly calling for his son. The young couple gazed with astonishment at the sight of their visitor's emotion, and wondered to see the large tears silently chasing each other down his otherwise stern and immovable features. But they felt the sacredness of his grief and kindly refrained from questioning him as to its cause, while, with instinctive delicacy, they left him to indulge his sorrow alone. Oof. That got me, folks. That got me. We talked yesterday about how this returning to your childhood can bring up complicated emotions unlike many other things can. The lack of closure Dante feels surrounding his father, amplifying those feelings of nostalgia and replacing them or augmenting them with feelings of remorse, maybe feelings of guilt, anger, a kind of painful sorrow that comes only at feeling like you've missed out on something deeply important, something stripped away from you. God, I don't even know that I can read the sentence again. The eyes of Edmond were suffused in tears as he reflected on that spot the old man breathed his last, vainly calling for his son. Whew. I don't know if any of you, and I don't want to put you in this headspace, have had to sit on the deathbed of someone. If you have, that is, man, that's an image, and that's a big emotion. What I find interesting about this is that Dumas is going to great efforts to talk about how basically everything in this apartment, from the flowers outside that his dad loved to plant to literally the wallpaper, has changed, except for the only thing that remains is that it's, the same four walls. And that he explains this in a way that doesn't dredge up resentment in Dante, but kind of it amplifies that sorrow, kind of suggests a certain internal suffering. Because you could see in a more superficial story this just, an author bypassing this internal flood of emotions and just focusing on how much it makes him recognize what was stripped away from him and focus more on it delivering anger and resentment and fueling his revenge. But we're allowing Dante a moment of internal reflection and not preventing him or making him prevent himself from having the emotional catharsis of seeing where his dad drew his last breath. Grief, I should have just looked at the text here. Grief, it's allowing him a moment of deeply felt grief. That's something you don't find in kind of the more superficial adventure stories. In fact, I'm sure when people adapt this for the screen, these are the sorts of moments they probably omit for doing a 2-hour movie. Yet, this feels crucial to the ongoing development of who Dante is. He's been so focused on intentionally building himself a certain way. This is one of the few moments when, regardless of his grasp over trying to craft himself strictly for revenge, that the real side of Dante comes out. His humanity is unignorable in this moment. You know, if he were completely hardened beyond redemption, he wouldn't be feeling what he feels in this moment. He would just be utilizing it as that fuel for the fire, as I said. Okay, I was not prepared for an emotional punch at the end of this chapter, but here we are, and I'm always happy to be surprised by Dumas. This is what makes this text so dynamic, is we can go from the kind of fun, capery stuff of putting on different disguises all the way to having an emotional catharsis in a couple pages. So I'm curious how we're going to end this chapter tomorrow. But before I do, it's the penultimate episode, which means that I have to mention the Patreon. Over at patreon.com/gruntworkpod, you can become a contributing member to this show, to our podcast network, and help keep this show ad-free, artist-owned, and honestly, just helping to pay the way for us to finish the 4-year mission that we've set out for ourselves. You can do that for as little as $1 per month without long-term commitments. You can cancel after 1 month if you want. You only want to contribute $1, you can. What you get for that is at the end of every chapter, so tomorrow, I put out story-only audio of each of the chapters in full, so you can listen to chapter 25 in its entirety without my commentary, as well as some bonus episodes like the reading of Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. Maybe I did Premature Burial. I'm not sure. I'm recording this so far ahead of time that we have passed by the the window in which my wager stood, where if I got 5 new reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, that I would do a secondary reading of Premature Burial. And I'm just now in the moment realizing, oh yeah, what if that doesn't happen? And I'm putting my whole ass out here, and we see what nonsense it was to promise that in the first place. Oh boy. Anyway, back to the pitch here. So you can do all of that over at patreon.com/gruntworkpod. And if you can't contribute, that is totally fine. I'm still glad you're here. You can support the show by leaving a rating review over at those places I said, or sharing the show with someone you know, because a 1-1 recommendation goes a long way to actually getting someone to listen. I would appreciate that if you send them an episode, you send them the podcast feed, let them know that the show exists and that they might like it, and they're more likely to actually press play. Lastly, I want to hear from you. Join us in the Discord. Tell us what you think about the story, about the podcast, things you'd like to see. Slowly building a cool community there. I love to see each of you and your thoughts on this weird, absurd project we're doing. So the link to the Discord is in today's show notes. It is free for literally any of you listening to join, and I encourage you and hope you do. So join me here tomorrow as we conclude chapter 25. Until then, you know where to find me. Right here. It's right here. Okay. Goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others like it, visit patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.